I feel like I've been conned. I feel like I've been deceived and forced into doing something that I wouldn't ordinarily have done. I lived here for 6 years, then I moved away, so I'm letting it out. You could get 4 people in here, so £85 per night is pretty good compared to a hotel rate. They made a booking through the Airbnb website. They messaged and said that they wanted to pay cash, which I was a little bit suspicious of, and I refused that. It's not only against the rules, but also if anything goes wrong, then it's a booking that's outside of the website and not covered by any of the guarantees. You might as well just get someone in off the street. So when they checked in, I was a little bit suspicious, but I thought little else of it. They texted on the day they were due to leave and said, "We've had a heavy night. Can we leave a couple of hours later?" And a name was on there. It was quite an unusual name, so I just thought, well, let's have a look and Google this. When you put that name into Google plus the lead guest's name, there was a picture of the two together, and that's when I found a story about them acting as high-profile escorts. Looking at both their ads, some of the rates were about £1,300 a night. So if they were fully booked for the 2 nights, that's £2,600 each, £5,200 in total. The feeling was a bit like when I had to rush home from work a couple of years ago because I thought I'd left a tea towel on the hob. It felt like the place was burning down. So I came into the flat. It smelled of wine and perfume. I found used condom wrappers under the bed. I found the bin was overflowing with tissues and condoms. And basically what I had to do was pick all that up with my hands. There were probably about 7 or 8 wine bottles as well. They'd got through a fair bit of Prosecco and a fair bit of Pinot Grigio. It might seem a strange thing to say, but one of the things that really surprises me is that if they want to carry on doing this, how easy would it have been for them to clear up their own tracks? Quite easy. And then they might even have ended up with a repeat booking. So it actually surprised me that they were that bad at cleaning up after themselves. I called the police and I told them everything. I gave them all the information possible, because what I was worried about was basically ensuring I hadn't broken the law as well by renting the place out to them. The police took down all the information. They took my contact details. I got a crime reference number. Then I heard nothing further. I did inquire again about it and follow it up. They basically said, "Well, you may well not hear from us again, but we have taken it down as intelligence. As far as I know, I won't hear anything back from the police at all." I feel a bit let down. It's not just that I feel bad for myself, but I feel bad for other people as well, who might be renting out in good faith, then, unwittingly, potentially committing a crime. I want to sell the flat now. I just want rid of it, to be honest. I really liked living here. I loved the place, but unfortunately, it's not worth it at all. Airbnb commented, "We have zero tolerance for this type of behavior and are urgently investigating this case. Over 160 million people have traveled on Airbnb, and bad experiences are extremely rare." Charlotte. Going on tour, I either rent holiday apartments or I use hotels. I do 2 or 3 days here and there. I always come back to Devon once a month. I've built up a nice client base in Kent, and I'm just starting to branch out in West London. There's all sorts of apps that you can use. They're really easy to access. At the end of the day, if you're renting an apartment or short-term let, holiday apartments, anything like that, providing you're leaving that property in the condition you found it in, I don't see what the problem is. When I was living in Exeter, I had my own apartment to work from. I was able to have my own routine, to vet clients. I had a screen on the buzzing system so I could see who I was buzzing in. I was able to ensure my own safety. But when I did a documentary with Rupert Everett in 2014, my next-door neighbor saw it, made a complaint against me, and I was evicted from my family home. The startup costs of being able to get your own property to work from are massive. You've got your month's rent, and then a month's rent in advance, the security deposit. Sometimes it's not financially viable, so short-term lets and hotels are probably the only other answer. But the downfall with that is that you've not got that safety element of being able to understand the local area. You don't know who any of the dangerous clientele could be because you've not already got that experience there. I would never go on tour on my own to a new place that I've never been to before. No way. Because there is no safety agency or union out there that I can tell where I am or what I'm doing. So if I was going to try a new area, then of course I will want another worker there with me. But the unfortunate thing is, that is breaking the law. Two sex workers working together. And until we decriminalize sex workers will never be safe by not being able to work in pairs. Drug users concocted a story about a sick child to get into a Sydney woman's Airbnb apartment before they turned it into a junkie's den, ransacking the house and causing more than $10,000 damage. A mystery green liquid had been smeared on the walls, her towels were covered in blood, and she found a crack pipe in her vase. And she says Airbnb were totally ignoring her claim until Fairfax became involved. Michelle told Holly and her boyfriend she had a sick child in the Sydney Children's Hospital in Randwick and was looking for a nearby apartment to stay in for 10 days in August. Holly, who asked Fairfax not to reveal her last name, was new to Airbnb and had decked out her new Roselle apartment out with nice furniture and linen and had it professionally cleaned before Michelle arrived. They stayed at their mother's for the 10 days, hoping to use the Airbnb earnings to pay off a credit card bill. After Michelle checked out, Holly came back to clean up. It's best to let her describe what greeted her. Our beloved apartment had been turned into what I can best assume is a junkie's den. The place was completely ransacked and absolutely stank like chemicals. The smell we later found out from the police was either ice or heroin. Fruit had been thrown at all the walls, leaving them covered and stinking. A crack pipe was left in our vase. Our smoke alarm was covered so they could smoke inside. Cigarettes all over the apartment, ash all over our $2,000 rug, rubbish and debris literally everywhere, used cigarettes all through our kitchenware and my cupboards, all our linen and towels stolen. There was random green liquid on a lot of walls and all over the floor. The whole floor was covered in a strange sticky substance. 2 towels were left on the floor covered in blood. Every single drawer, box, and shelf was ransacked. All our furniture was in a different place. Table lamps were kicked in, bedside lamps were stolen, cushions stolen, Bose speakers stolen, an external hard drive was stolen. The list is endless. Holly estimates the total damage bill at north of $10,000. She is homeless as they try to find a place to live while the damage is repaired. After police forensic teams finished combing the place, she's now set about trying to fix everything. But she says Airbnb were ignoring her claim before Fairfax got involved. We made a report to Airbnb and heard not a word from them, Holly says. I have called every day and been put through to a call center who assures me that Airbnb security are looking into our claim. They haven't asked me what happened. No apology. Haven't organized cleaners. Literally nothing. We want them to repay us for the cleaning and all the damages, but we can't even speak to anyone who can help us. How can they let dangerous criminals into our home and not even bother to call and say sorry? After Fairfax contacted Airbnb, a spokesman said any host complaining about a tenant was required to try to resolve it directly with the tenant in the first instance. Airbnb would only consider a claim if that process did not work within 4 days. That process has now started with Holly. She has been directed to a form to list the damage done to her apartment. After that, Airbnb will assess her claim. A spokesman for the company said Airbnb would consider prosecuting the individual, who had since been banned from the site. We have a zero tolerance for this sort of behavior, and will work with police to make sure these guests are held accountable for their actions, a spokesman said. On Thursday night, spurred on by media attention, Airbnb agreed to transfer $2,200 to Holly to help with immediate cleanup and to help her find accommodation. The final insult for Holly. After the forensics team finished in her apartment, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was Airbnb, reminding her to make sure she rated her house guests. I've been staying in Airbnbs for 8 years now, and I'm lucky to only have one nightmare story from recently. I booked an Airbnb in a major Canadian city for me and 3 friends. It was a private suite kind of deal in a large house that seemed to be all suites being rented out. but not all by the same host. In advance of the trip, the host was friendly and responsive. She wasn't going to be there at check-in, but left instructions that seemed straightforward enough. Get the key out of a lockbox outside the building and the unit is inside. Sure, no problem. We had originally asked about early check-in, but it wasn't possible because cleaners were going to be there, so we said no problem and just took our bags around with us. We arrived about an hour after the earliest check-in time. We got the keys from the lockbox without a problem, got into the house no problem, and then couldn't find the unit number. Between 5 of us, another friend was with us to hang out but not spending the night. Walking around the entire place, knocking on doors and trying our key in every lock, sorry to the other guests we scared, we could not find our unit at all. I was frantically messaging the host during this time but got no response. She didn't leave her phone number, so I got in touch with Airbnb support. They had a number for her and tried to call several times, but also had no response. While I was on the phone, my friends continued walking around the entire property, even trying to see if they could recognize the windows in the listing from the outside by the curtains. Eventually, I told the support people I wanted to cancel, but they initially gave me a hard time because I was already checked in. I told them no, I couldn't have checked into a unit I couldn't find. It took another hour of being bounced around between agents and explaining the situation over and over, while they waited for a response from the owner. They also said they had a policy to give her a certain amount of time to respond before they could move forward with the cancellation. Finally, they canceled the reservation and processed my refund, and we left to stay in a hotel after checking and finding that no other Airbnbs in the area were even remotely in our price range. Support didn't offer to help us find a new place, and I didn't know I could ask them. A few hours later, I got bombarded with angry messages from the host saying that I was rude and awful, and that there was no problem with her unit and I was making up stories. I didn't reply. Fast forward a week, I got an email that she left a review for me. Because I was technically checked in for all of 3 hours, it was still processed that I had stayed there, so we could leave reviews for each other. I contacted support again and had to re-explain the situation. They tried to tell me that she was allowed to leave a review because I had stayed there. I told them no. They needed to review the notes of what happened. The reservation was canceled because I couldn't find it to check in. They sent me the text of her review. She said that I came into the unit, used the shower and left a huge mess, and then lied about not being able to get in so I could cancel the reservation. I told them again to review my side of what had happened. Finally, they did, and they removed her pending review. I never left one for her, and I still wonder where the fuck that unit was, because 5 people plus some kind strangers in another unit who got invested in our cause and tried to help couldn't find it in 2 hours of searching.